Don't be left at port. This almost happened to us, and I'll tell you more about it. Hi, I'm Cynthia with Cruising Time. Welcome back to the channel. Now today we're going to talk a little bit about open loop and closed loop cruises. We're also going to touch on the Jones Act, which can affect you if you join a cruise late or if you embark early, or even if you're going on a back-to-back cruise on the same ship. So let's get started. Okay, so this can get a little bit complicated when we're talking about the Jones Act, or what's also known as the Passenger Service Act, and the open and closed loop cruise itineraries. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually read what I wrote down regarding this, so I can make sure I get it to you correctly and in as simple as terms as possible, because it can get a little complicated to follow along with me, and I for sure don't want to make this that boring when we're trying to learn something. So here we go. What is the Passenger Services Act? Well, it is a law that actually affects how cruise ships set up their itinerary. Any cruise ship that travels between U.S. ports, they must comply with these regulations. Most cruise ships, however, are foreign flagged and they're non-U.S. registered. So therefore, a foreign flagged ship that begins and ends at the same U.S. port and they visit a foreign port will actually not violate this act. This is what we call the closed loop itinerary. Since closed loop itineraries begin and end in the same U.S. port, you usually only need a birth certificate and a state ID to board. Now, some foreign ports of call might actually still require a passport if you are planning on disembarking. So, as long as you board your ship at its original embarkation port, you do not disembark early in another U.S. port, and you don't book a back-to-back cruise ending and then beginning in the same U.S. port and on the same ship, you should be smooth sailing. Let me give you an example of how this could potentially affect you. So you book a cruise. It's leaving out of New York. It's making a stop in Miami and then on into the Bahamas. Well, the cruise itself is not violating the act because it is hitting a foreign port, which is the Bahamas. Now, your flight becomes delayed the day of the cruise due to a snowstorm that's hitting New York. You decide that you're going to pick up the cruise in Miami instead. Well, this actually violates the act. Now, what happens is the cruise lines will actually get fined because you are picking up the cruise in a different location than it left. Remember, this is a closed loop itinerary, meaning you have to begin and you have to end the cruise in the same U.S. port location. So if you remember, I also mentioned that if you disembark the cruise early, that you could potentially violate this act as well. So in the same scenario as the New York to Miami to the Bahamas, if you disembark in Miami, you are also violating the act because you, again, are not beginning and ending your cruise at the same port location, the same U.S. port location. Now, you're booking a back-to-back cruise. Most of your cruise lines will catch this before you get to the point, but if for some reason they don't, then once you disembark and you try to re-embark on the same ship, you will be left at port because this violates that law. And this is considered a one transport instead of two distinct sailings. So they're looking at it as if it's just one complete sailing, not two separate sailings. So this also can violate that law as well. Now let's talk about when a foreign flagged ship begins and ends in different U.S. ports. Well, this is known as the open loop itineraries. These itineraries actually require also that you have a passport. Now, I always suggest having a passport because this is actually what happened to us. We had expired passports. We had scheduled a 12-day cruise that was to leave one U.S. port and to return to another U.S. port. And I was not aware of this act. And I had to get a passport within a couple of weeks. So if you would like to know how I did that, then make a comment down below and I would be more than happy to do another video on how we were able to obtain our passports within 2 weeks so we could actually make that cruise. But the open loop itineraries have to include a foreign distant port for them to be in compliance if it is a foreign flagged ship. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you have found it informative or learned something new. And if you have, please give it a big thumbs up and comment down below if you would like to learn more about any information that I provided in this. I do want to make a disclaimer that I am not an attorney. I'm not a lawyer. This is just general knowledge that I have gathered over research and by experience as well. So please subscribe to the channel and have a great day.